This
I
is
don't know.
cool.
I don't know how good I would have been. Okay, so we're rolling now, and I was having this thought. I know a lot of people, whether they go to Seeds or they see Church on the Move on Vimeo or whatever. I know I'm super this way, where you see what's going on at Church on the Move, and it's very inspiring. Even just kind of hanging out here tonight, it's like, oh yeah, like, you see all this going on, and it's very inspiring. And the thing is that the church the size of Church on the Move is the anomaly. Most churches are not this large.
Right.
Most churches are 200 members or less. And
Right.
so they go to Seeds or they see something on Vimeo and they go, that's great. How do I scale that down to something that fits my church? And some people figure it out and some people don't figure it out, and either they do it and then they're discouraged because it just did not work.
Right.
I was like, so how can I help people that are at a smaller church scale this thing down? And I was like, who can I talk to? It's like, who'd be really good about figuring out how to scale down Church on the Move? Church on the Move, because when you guys opened up your second campus at Glenpool, relatively speaking, that's a smaller congregation. It is a smaller venue. And so a lot of these logistics, one way or another, you had to figure out.
Right.
And so I kind of want to walk through that process and the good and the bad and the ugly, and that's a couple of years ago, and obviously you're refining it and all that different stuff. But when you found out at the very beginning, like, okay, hey, we're opening up a second campus, and this is going to be kind of what it is. So it's got to be Church on the Move, but not. So what were some of your initial reactions and your thoughts to all of this?
My first one was, you want to do what? Because I was, it seemed out of character at the time. I was actually hired by Willie George. There wasn't an HR department, and because this was having this role that I was going to take was very important to him. And so I came in to make church, to do big stuff in church. So when we started, so years later, when we're doing that and making strides and doing what we had planned, and we start hearing talk of, let's do another campus. I mean, that's the tendency. That's what we need to do. We need to start serving other parts of our community. Like everybody, there's most churches, it's not a foreign concept to have multiple campuses.
Right.
And I kind of sat there at the table going, we worked so hard to make it big, and we actually started talking as a team going, we kind of suck at doing things small.
So
to be honest.
You knew right at the beginning, like, this is going to be smaller. Like, this isn't like, I think of like the Life Church model. They kind of take what they do and it's duplicated.
Right.
I mean, it's pretty much the same wherever you go. You knew that from the very beginning, this was going to be smaller.
Yes, and so right off the bat, we actually had a venue. They had found a venue that they had been, I guess, years before, someone had tried to get this venue worked out, and it just wasn't the right time for the church. Well, they already knew of a venue. So I'm like, okay, well, let me just go look at this place. So I go look at it, and it was the Glenpool Conference Center. Beautiful building, wasn't that old, a few years old. It looked like a church. Like, it looked like a really cool modern church. If you took the Glenpool stuff off the front of it, it'd be like, that could sell as a church. But I walked in, it's 2 ballrooms with an air wall that you can pull apart, and I kind of walked in, sheetrock, rectangle room, all sheetrock, drop ceiling, concrete floor, and I was just kind of like, oh crap. I mean, how are we going to do this? 15-foot ceilings in most of the place, and then a few places it goes up to a 19-foot ceiling. How do we do this? How do we even do PA? How do we do audio? This is a move-in, move-out situation. It was all this just kind of hit me. Because if you remember, I wasn't a church guy. I mean, I'd never worked in a church before except doing concerts with Christian bands sometimes when I was touring. So I didn't know how do you really accomplish this? So that's where I started. So all those things are like flooding into my head on this first conversation. But then I just started carving it out going, okay, how would I accomplish this We know it's got to sound big, but it's not set up. You're not going to put 12 or 15 people on stage. That's not going to work. You can't fit that. It's not going to make sense. So how do we make wise choices in what kind of audio system we put in that can still have a lot of impact, but not kill everybody? Because you're in a room that I figured out, I mean, I did a billion different layouts of the room, how many chairs we could put in. I mean, hours and hours of different seating configurations to try to maximize the seating, because I'm thinking, how do we make this room as big as possible? As soon as we start really pouring over that stuff, everyone's like, how do you put less people in it? So we're starting a church from nothing.
Right.
So you're not going to pack in 600 chairs in there. There's not going to be 600 people.
Right.
So how do you make it scalable? That was the big question. So we just started figuring it out. Okay, what's the baseline, what's the least common denominator for our music? We figured that out. It's a 4-piece band, some singers, and some tracks. That's pretty normal to most churches that are doing this. And we had to take a lesson from smaller churches and go, what's working for you? Mm-hmm. Like how do you pull this off? Tracks were a big thing. Mm-hmm. We didn't ever use tracks. We always put live musicians on stage because we thought it was more authentic. You know what? I like it. And I like all the real instrumentation. And why would we have a keyboard that sounds like a Wurlitzer when you can actually have a Wurlitzer and a B3? And
right.
Doesn't make sense. So we just had to adopt some of these other attitudes, which probably sounds stupid that we were so late to the game, but it was, truthfully, we hadn't really thought about how we do this. So we just had to start at zero. Mm-hmm. Okay, what's the least common denominator for the music? How do you do the seating where it's scalable? Well, it depends on the kind of chair you buy. Okay? I mean, it really comes down to that. Well, I had to pay attention to, what do I do in this room that's concrete floor? I went out there one time with a snare drum. I took a piccolo snare drum, and I went into the empty room, but this was months before we ever did anything. I was just trying to get my head around this. And I went in the room, and I hit that snare drum a couple times. The people that run the building thought I was a complete lunatic, but I was proving to myself that the room sounded terrible. You hit a drum like that in a sheetrock and concrete room, and it was terrible. That is the very lowest level. How do I tame that? Because you come here and you walk in and it's huge, it sounds huge, the room is tuned, there's carpet in the right spots. It's every detail's been looked after. Mm-hmm. How are we going to do that when we set up on the same Sunday we're doing services? Mm-hmm. Well, can we carpet the room? Who does that? Who loads in carpet we do. Every single Sunday at 3:30. We load in carpet and we carpet this huge space to make it feel intimate. And you know what? It made the room smaller. You put carpet in the room. You do it at home. You take hardwoods out, put carpet in, the room feels smaller.
Right.
It worked. Not only does it make the room feel smaller, but it makes it sound smaller and it makes it more inviting. So you walk in and all of a sudden, this feels pretty cool. We put in chairs that were heavy padding, so they're very absorptive. They match the chairs here. So if you walk in one venue, and they're all multicolored, and it's the same color palette everywhere. When we started moving up to, okay, well, let's put in a small stage. Who can we fit on it? Well, that 4 or 5-piece band and a few singers is all it'll fit. Okay, guess what? We scaled the stage down where there's not all this extra space. It felt small. You put the band up there and it looks really full. Mm-hmm. But even though it's a third of the band that you'd have here, So everything we looked at was, how do we, and that's just what I spent time on. How do we make this work but feel small and accessible? That's really the word. We wanted people to walk in and go, this feels cool. We didn't want to have, nothing against it, but we didn't want to have speakers on a stick on the side of the screens and an overhead slide projector with lyrics. We weren't going to do that. We wanted it to be, we're a church that kind of is known for doing production a certain way.
Right.
But by taking every single element, every single one, from how we do wireless mics to the stage, to the carpeting, to how we set up the kids' rooms, How can that all go in a tractor trailer and be unloaded quickly? How can the least amount of volunteers set it up? Again, you're in a big church, you've got a ton of volunteers.
Yeah.
Well, you go start a small church, that model doesn't work. What if you only have 2 people? How are you going to do this? How can we do it with the least amount of staff? So when we started out there was a campus pastor and a technical director, period. That's it. And we were kind of borrowing and stealing whatever other kind of staff people we could find from the main campus. But it helped it start small. And that's been something that's been very difficult for us to maintain because we always want to
ramp it up.
We always want to ramp it up, right? And that's what a lot of churches do. How do we make it bigger? How do we make it bigger? I go to churches all year long, and that's some of the questions. How do we make this bigger and better and cooler? And I'm like, guys, you might have a charm here that's really working for the people walking in the doors. That's what we were trying to find. We started doing the music a little different. So if you're familiar with what we do at Church on the Move, we usually do these huge songs with big sweeping lighting looks and all that. We're in a room where I can't use haze. There is no atmosphere. I can't do it. They can't disable their fire detection system. So there's no smoke or fog machines in that room. So, well, that's not going to work. It's a low ceiling. Any kind of lights you put in the audience are just going to blind everybody. It's projectors, not LED. You just name it. Every single thing we had to compromise on, but it all equaled. We found a charm that worked.
Well, you even say compromise. You compromise compared to like how you do it here at Central, but there was a sense of like this is what's appropriate here. Like we chose projection because that's the right choice here.
Correct.
We chose to only have a 4-piece and a couple of singers because that's the right choice here.
The right choice, and that's where we look at a lot of these things and we look at what everybody else does and we think, if I could only do this, well, really? Like, yeah, we could add tons more lighting. And you know what? The lighting looks fine out there. It's not going to win some huge award, but we aren't wanting to win an award. We could put in a ton of lighting, but you've added an hour or 2 to a setup. You've got to store them. I don't know where we get the capital to pay for them. You're certainly not going to rent, for that kind of a setup. So what's the point? And if you don't have a haze or atmosphere in the room, you could add 500 more lights and you're not going to notice it because you can't see any beams and all that kind of stuff. So we compromised on almost everything we did.
So how do you do Church on the Move light? Like something that you walk into the room and say, okay, yep, that's Church on the Move. Right. How do you do that? Smaller venue, no haze, and very limited on, like, what did you land on?
We figured out that trying to do the exact set list that we were doing at Central wasn't going to work. Now, we may do the same songs, but trying to do them, we initially started this, and we've gone through so many permutations of success and failure with this, because we didn't know. There's no handbook. Or maybe there is now. There wasn't.
You guys are writing it.
Yeah, I guess. We're still figuring it out, but we initially started with whatever we do here, we're going to do there. That's it. Same set list, same songs, same style. We realized just a couple weeks in, we're like, it doesn't work. We base our whole sound here on an immersive experience. You're not going to get an immersive experience in a room that size. It's not that big. So let's tackle it a different way. Do the same songs, but let's change the arrangements a little bit. It might be the same map, but let's change the arrangements a little bit. Let's focus a little more on the acoustic instruments, the acoustic guitar. Here, I call an acoustic guitar a crutch. There, it's useful because you build your mix a little differently. The drums are there, they're present, but they're totally enclosed in glass. I mean, it's an aquarium. There's a lid and everything. We had to. Well, that makes the drums sound a certain way. It's not good or bad. It's necessary. But we compromised on some of that. So you would sit here in a big open room with, 165,000 watts of PA, and it's just huge, whatever. Out there, it's not that. But it's perfect for the room. It's like we finally figured out how to scale to the space. You know, like a goldfish. You put a goldfish like in a little bowl and it just stays that big.
Mm-hmm.
You throw it in a pond and it grows huge and gangly.
Right.
So we had to figure out how do we put all these elements in a small space and play to the room. And so many people miss that.
Right.
They want their room to accommodate this huge big thing, and they want to hang people from the ceiling and have lasers and all that stuff. And I'm like, guys, you're in a garage.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe we don't need all that. Maybe the charm of this was doing an acoustic set that actually had a meaningful worship experience attached to it. So we rode that wave,
mm-hmm.
up and down, up and down, up and down. And we have finally found the way to just tackle this is just to keep it simple. Keep it simple. Worshipful songs, plenty of lyrics, plenty of vocals in the mix, no lights in everybody's faces, no haze, no fog. It's lit, it's illuminated nicely, it's a comfortable room. You walk in, it's got colors of the seats, feel like here. It's very much Church on the Move. Church on the Move is known for their hospitality, their grace, their friendliness. That's really what people walk away with. We'd like them to walk away and go, the production was awesome.
And that snare drum was right there in my
snare was
teeth.
right there. And to me, I'm like, well, if you didn't feel that, you just missed it. But you know, most of the people don't care about that stuff. They want to be treated nicely. They want their kids to have a great experience. They want, when they have a need, they want someone to listen to them. Mm-hmm. They need prayer. It's ministry. It's what it is. So that's what the campus pastors have worked hard on, is the event experience, the experience you have from the time you pull into the parking lot. Things like this. You pull in out here, the music from inside, the content from inside is playing outside in the parking lot. At the time when we did that, that was not very normal. Mm-hmm. But a lot of the guys here I have drank the Disney Kool-Aid. And so that's something that really starts the experience. There's music everywhere there, right? There's music and all that. Mm-hmm. We thought, wouldn't it be great when you get out of your car, you're already starting to get the vibe of what's going to happen in the building? Mm-hmm. It's exciting. Well, how do you do that in a building you don't own? How do you do that in a building where you just moved in? We do a portable system. Little portable system set up in the flower bed. Yeah. And you walk in and it gets a line from inside and it's done. And the line runs under the garage door and out to the flower bed. Nobody even sees it. It's that easy with a $600 Fender Passport system from Guitar Center. I mean, that's all it is. But all of a sudden you get out of your car and you're kind of like, wow, music's coming from somewhere. You don't know that there's a speaker laying down in the mulch. It doesn't matter.
Well, when you go to Disney, it's like, instead of coming from a rock.
There's a rock, yeah, or from a tree or something like that. So it's those things of going, it's small. It doesn't mean it has to be crappy. It's just we kind of had to start skinning that cat a different way, knowing that, well, we're not going to go in and install speakers all over the exterior of the building. Things like when you go in the lobby, the system there, it's a great building, but the audio system in the ceiling speakers are terrible.
Right.
It just wasn't put in. They didn't need. It's a conference center. They didn't worry about it. So you just can't. There's not really much vibe. Well, we did simple things like, well, we're going to put portable TVs in all the lobbies, and there's a lot of lobby space. So we have portable TVs on stands, and they're skirted. Well, we have a powered speaker sitting underneath the skirting that has a little feed from the TV. So whatever content we send the TV is output to a speaker. So you walk around and there's just vibe. Mm-hmm. Well, it was a small building answer to a huge thing. We put in who knows how many dollars into all of our lobby spaces here in a huge facility that you walk out there and go, it feels the same. There's signage, so it feels right. There's music. There's friendly people, greeters, same shirts. It's Church on the Move. It's still one church. It's just this one is kind of small. The kids' classrooms are smaller, but you know what? There's still LED lighting in them and sound systems and TVs and stuff. It's not a cinder block, terrible room like I always had Sunday school in when I was in the Baptist church.
Right.
It was terrible. I didn't want to go to church. It was awful. And I was scared of the lady teaching the lesson. I didn't want anything to do with it. But you go in there and it's this amazing interactive experience with people that are having a joyful time. And a lot of the people go out there, they like that there's a smaller classroom experience for their kids. So we just started figuring this out and going, let's harness that and not apologize for it.
Well, yeah, and I think a lot of times too, you see what a large church is doing, you're like, that's so cool. How can I do that?
Right.
And there's certain things that when you're in a large venue or a large space, there's certain things that work. I would imagine at Church on the Move, one of the things that'd be really hard to do is just those really intimate, small moments where it's just like an acoustic and a vocal or whatever. Whereas at the Glenpool campus,
It totally works.
it totally works. And so you find the charm and you say, okay, I'm going to find the charm.
That's our win.
Yeah, I'm going to go for that.
Yes. That's what we found out. In fact, we changed some of the content just over the years of what we do here to actually get a little closer to the vibe there. And now at our other venue and campus here on the same property, it's a smaller building too. We've actually toned down what we do here so it's a little closer, right? Not that, and times have changed. Like, we're not flying anybody from the ceilings anymore. We don't do a lot of lasers. It's just, we've done all that. And it was great and awesome, and we loved it.
And it served a purpose at the time.
It served a purpose at the time. It's not what everybody needs right now, and it's not the vision of the church. So now we're focusing on how do we actually do really big church here and make it feel a little smaller, which means you go to the other campus and it feels even closer to the experience here, right? Because we kind of we're kind of trying to match it.
Work both, work both ends.
And it gives a lot. It makes the content and the situation that the South Campus has to come up with a little. It's like gives them a fighting chance. We're not competing, but here's the deal. Would you go to a church that's 30 miles away when it's the same preaching, same vibe, or go to the like Cirque du Soleil show-ish church 30 miles away? It's not fair. So that's where some of the models like Life Church, we look at them all the time and go, that's really cool. It's the same thing at every campus.
No matter what.
No matter what. Music is 18 and a half minutes long. It's this. That works. Now that's not necessarily what every church can go do and have the exact same size venue and all that. So, but we can look at something like that and go, they're getting that right. But maybe not everything they do is what we want to do.
Right.
But that's the thing I would say to churches who look at that and go, I want to do this, I want to do that. There's always one thing you can apply in a very small space. You can always look at somebody doing something huge and go, I can't do all that, and I've got to be realistic about what our building can do. If I tried to hang all that from the ceiling, the whole church would fall down. So I can't do that. But I can do this part that I saw them do, and we could really rock that. And so that's what we started doing from the other side. We started looking at, how are these churches doing this? How are they putting campuses up every 2 months and making them work? It's because they were going simpler. And our tendency was to go complex and complicated and intense. How do you just cool it out? Yeah, I want to just have an acoustic moment with an acoustic guitar and everybody singing and not a lot of production. Perfect. We have a great campus to do that in, right?
Yeah.
But if you need to go crazy with a song and go nuts, you know what? It'll still scaled. It's still going to feel nuts out there, but it's not the same as here. But when you're in that environment, we just realized that, hey guys, the ceilings are 15 feet tall. So how loud do we really want to get it in here? Let's put some control on this. And it's a great experience. I mean, it's a growing church. There's more people every Sunday there than there is the previous. That's good. But finding, I guess when you come down to it, and if you're willing to analyze everything, I mean, if you're really willing to look at every single thing and go, how can I make that better? How can I improve it? That's where you start finding these ways to win when you're trying to set up small. And we tried it we did it all backwards. Like we never, I wasn't here when they started small, but it feels like, You know, like your mom might have. My mom always told me that I was born at like, age 12. And I was like, that's sort of weird. When I was young, she would say that. I thought that was a really weird thing to say. As I got older, it made sense. Well, sometimes I feel like Church on the Move was born as a big church. I was never here to experience the small side.
Well, and you even came from an avenue. The reason you got here is because, hey, you're good at doing big things. We need someone to help us do big things.
That's right. And so it's foreign to me. I mean, nobody hired me ever. And I've been doing this almost 30 years now. No one ever hired me to go help them do a small show. Mm-hmm. It didn't happen. Yeah. It was always like, hey, we're going on the road and we want to make this like the biggest, coolest thing ever. Yeah. And we're going to have the biggest explosions. Yeah. They never asked, hey, we're really going to go on tour next year and really scale down and pull it back. No one ever said that to me. Yeah. I didn't know either. But seriously, walking into that space with a snare drum, walking into that space and taking a chair from the back hallway, sitting it in the middle of the room and just sitting there by myself, looking at the space and just going, God, I'm going to need some prayer to figure this one out. Mm. How am I going to pull this off? And how am I going to do this where volunteers can get here and set it up in order to have a sound check by 7? Knowing what the expectation is from everybody here, like they all are used to the big thing. Mm-hmm. How are we going to do this? So again, we lived and learned. We didn't get it all right. We still don't get it all right. I think we get it right more than we get it wrong, but seriously, it's analyzing every single thing you do. And honestly, the motive, when I talk with some people at churches and they'll ask questions, how can I convince my pastor that we can go bigger and better and whatever? Mm-hmm. Man, that might not be the vision of the church. And it's got to be a top-down thing. Yeah. I can't go convince the leadership above me that they should be doing everything differently. I can have input, but if I can't be happy with their decision, mm-hmm. that we're going to be in a small building and we're going to make that work, because you know what? A small building is cheaper to operate than a large building. And you can always add more services. There's some logic to it. Yeah. If I can't get on board with that, I'm probably in the wrong seat.
Yeah. Well, I think I see a lot of worship pastors too, even just like song choice. They'll hear a certain song and it's the big epic Hillsong with big sweep in the
Or
middle.
A Bethel song.
Yeah.
You can't pull off a Bethel song the way they do it in a small venue very well.
So you have
it's going to be hard.
Right. And so sometimes I'll have conversations with people and say, okay, well, how can I get my pastor to do this? And it's like, well, maybe that's not the right song for you guys. And that's okay. Right. Because I think the benefit too is that, okay, there are certain things like this song works so good in a big venue.
Right.
But then, like, we do something at our church on in the summertime. Wednesday nights, our programming is mainly for kids and for students.
Right.
And, there's other adult things going on too, but like that's the big, like, it's about crazy kid men stuff. Yeah. And it's crazy student ministry stuff.
It's a good night to bring your family to. Exactly. It's about something to do.
Right. So in the summertime though, we kind of shut all that stuff down and we do what we call summer family worship. And everyone's in one room and we scale it all down. And it's kind of, since we don't do Sunday night church in our Baptist church, that's kind of our time to do Sunday night church.
Right.
And it's usually me and a bass guitar and maybe another singer. And we're not going to do the big Hillsong stuff, but we're going to lean a little bit more on
the Hillsong Chapel stuff, maybe.
Yeah. Or Chris Tomlin wrote some great songs in the 2000s that still apply today. How Great Is Our God still plays.
And you know what? I bet those are some sweet moments.
They are. And they are because, sometimes the people singing in the room are the loudest people in the room, which is pretty cool.
Yep.
And it's different. And it's got a charm to it. And it's different than what the norm is. And sometimes it's fun to go off script a little bit.
We look for the creative staff and the music team, they look for moments. But the moment here on a huge stage with tons of production and tons of staff and all that, may be a different moment out there. Mm-hmm. But it's the same quest. So you're scaled. The moment here is going to be big. Well, over here, it's this big. So the moment is going to be different. That's our plan. We're trying to find worship moments. Introducing people to, setting them up to hear about the real Jesus from someone. That can mean a multitude of different things. But you're right, the reality check is huge. we had to do a reality check. And I think I was part of that, of bringing stuff back to the boardroom table going, okay, here's the deal. Like, this is a big deal to try to pull off. They wanted us to open with a live video link between campuses. Without
Which is kind of a North Point thing.
It is. And, so the perfect idea is the speaker could be at any campus, anywhere, and it could pipe to anywhere. That's awesome, and that is possible, and we do have live link capability. We didn't open with it. We opened, since we have, at the main campus, we have Saturday and Sunday services. We opened with, can we take the Saturday night service or message and put it on a drive or whatever it is and get it out there and they can play it. It's Memorex, whatever. Worked great. We did that for about a year. And then it was like, okay, we've got this down. We've kind of got this figured out. Teams are rolling. Let's move into the live link thing. So we did. It wasn't that huge of an adjustment, but having the reality check of it's not prudent for us to open with the potential for failure of this magnitude.
Right, because there's so many other things to figure out.
We have to get used to this. They've changed the configuration of the kids' rooms 8,000 times because of how they all fit in the rest of the building. It's a full building on Sundays. We just need to figure that out. How do we empty that? We have 2 services there. How do we empty the parking lot? When do we strategize services? How do we... All of that. So when we finally moved into a live link situation, we still kept reality because it was a send one way only thing. It wasn't we can't receive back from that campus. We can send them the messages live. We put in large DVRs that would give us some kind of time slip advantage. But it was being realistic. It was a year in before we messed with that. Now let me tell you what's interesting. So that campus is 4 or 5 years old. We went back just recently and we're not doing live link anymore. You know why? Because it's so complicated. It works. We've done it 1,000,000 times. But the staff out there, it just functions better with less people. It's a small campus. Mm-hmm. Can we run the tech booth with 3 people? That would be amazing because it gets a healthy environment for our volunteers. Having to be in a church situation where you have to have you available every single Sunday or this church isn't going to happen is a terrible weight to put on a volunteer. If we don't have a live link, it cut people out of the mix, meaning more people can volunteer, it's simpler, and it's cheaper. Mm-hmm. Whenever you're putting in more campuses, that is a lot of technology. Encoders and decoders and routing and dark fiber and all this kind of stuff. Could I just hand you a drive? Or better yet, could we just load it to a server? And when you get there in the morning at 4 or 5 a.m., you download it and it's ready to go? Or could we give it to you on a hyperdeck or something? We have all these different options. So we've even recently, we've found out we're making it too complicated.
Yeah.
It's like the music stuff. We get back to the music of being realistic. The art of the worship leaders at these campuses, and we've had several out there, the art for them is not just having a magnificent song service. It's knowing when a song doesn't work, like you were talking about earlier. Mm-hmm. So sometimes the set that we're going to do everywhere, we're doing a big, huge Bethel song or something here in this room, and it works because it's huge and washy and
you got the dolly shot and all that.
And the videos are going to make it, and the lights are going to make it. They go out there, and now they know enough about it to go reality check. It's not going to fly. The people are going to just listen to it, and it's not going to really connect because it kind of needs to be big and loud and immersive. Mm-hmm. It's not going to get that way. So we're going to switch it out for a song that we've done 1,000,000 times. But we're going to put it in here and do Cornerstone or whatever. Mm-hmm. And you know what? Everybody's going to sing their guts out. Right. And it's going to be a real moment. Great. So we deviated from the script for one song. Who cares?
Right.
It was a win.
Well, and you're able to, to do something maybe at that kind of campus because it's smaller. You can take advantage of the fact that it's smaller. That would not fly here at Central.
Right. And you can get away with it. Mm-hmm. We've done some really cool moments out there that I've been privileged to be a part of, where you're just kind of like Easter out there was fantastic.
Okay, so let's talk about that. So, like, give me, like, concrete examples. Obviously, people see a lot of, like, whether it's Easter or seeds or Christmas or whatever, what Church on the Move is capable of doing,
Right.
On a big scale. So, give me some examples of,
So this last Easter, we had, it was some kind of crazy scrim or some, maybe it was a black scrim or something that was just a really huge part of making this whole thing come together. Like, I think it was a black scrim and the way video looked through it, huge deal. We're in a 15-foot ceiling room. There's no scrim.
No.
What are you going to do? It's going to look retarded. By the time
and it's going to fall 10 feet.
Yeah, and if there's even enough weight to make it fall, by the time you put the rigging up, it's just a mess. So it was like, how do you solve that? Well, you take the same imagery, the same stuff that you would have projected onto a black scrim here, and you shoot it on the video screens. And you know what? We brought in a few extra lights, and believe it or not, we actually took in haze for Easter, and we had to pay the city for a live fire watch, which is what it's called, where they have live fire captains in the room watching for fire, and they turn the thing off. It's totally legal. It's all great, but it costs a lot for a small campus to do it. Well, for Easter, it's worth it.
Yeah.
You're not going to do that every week. So we actually got to put atmosphere in the room. Well, you start doing that, and then the imagery on the side actually starts getting a little murky because you can really turn the atmosphere up. And all of a sudden, you've got kind of a similar effect as looking through scrim at a video, which we were doing here, right? We just did it a different way. Totally easy. It didn't cost that much money. We brought in a few extra lights. We rented an LED wall instead of projection. We love our projectors. I mean, they're huge Barco projectors that are awesome, but
for Easter,
LED looks different. It's engaging. So for Easter, and we had rented the room for the whole week, so we had time to put in a big wall, make it look cool. We turned off the side projectors. So it was just a whole different feel. People walked in, and it was an ooh and ah moment. That's all we did. It was the same set, a few extra lights, an LED wall that was rented in, and it wasn't that big of a deal. A few little changes like that were realistic to do. And before you know it, you had a very similar moment that created a worshipful atmosphere based around Easter, the same way as here. Completely two different production angles on how to do it. But the end result was the songs we did here, they did there. They felt a little different. We added a few extra pieces of staging to the stage, which I found some rental that had the exact same staging that we had bought for that room. So I extended the stage out like 4 feet, something small, just so the singers could push out a little farther. And we added a small little choir, like 6 people, all with mics, so they could do like this big, cool gospel song. It sounded great. But you know what? What are we going to do? It's only a 4-piece band or 5-piece band. We took some of the live playing that we had here for some of the big rehearsals, and we recorded it and put it on track. So when they roll their Pro Tools system or Ableton or whatever they're using, they have some live, they have like Guitar 2 and B3 and all this stuff. It was magic.
Yeah.
It was all cool. And we've started doing that more. Like, hey, can we grab the keys to information from the live rehearsal you did? You bet. We record everything on the console. We put it out there. But it's something we learned at Easter. But we took this huge thing and we made it into a small thing. The room felt great. You know what? They had a late Sunday service after we were done at the main campus. My wife and I went out there, and dude, I'm tired. I'm blitzed, right? I went out there and I really enjoyed the service. I really did, because it was simple. And I was just kind of sitting there marveling, going, this sounds really good. And like everybody here is engaged. And it's like 4 p.m. on Easter when you would rather be home eating ham and deviled eggs.
Right.
And it was a really meaningful experience. And I'm like, I guess I'm jaded. I don't know. I mean, I do this so much, but it was just one of those things where you're just out there going, this is really great. All the same message that we were evoking from the art here, I received there. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Even though we tackled it completely different and the team out there had to execute it differently to work around that situation, I was sitting in the seats going, well, feels the same as I felt in the big room.
You got to dissect it a little bit and say, okay, well, what is it that makes this work? I'm not sure if this is true or not, but it makes a great example, so we're just going to assume that it's true.
Yeah.
So McDonald's has a crew of chefs that are like top chefs, and their job is to come in every day and just make stuff. Like no limitations, just make stuff. And they just come in and and it doesn't even have to be burgers. It could be wraps. It could be whatever they're inspired to do. They make it. So that's team A. Then there's team B that takes that and says, okay, well, if we're going to make this maybe a McDonald's product, I know that I can't use this ingredient because it's not going to travel in the truck well.
Yeah, but it's not available everywhere. Yeah,
right. So I'm going to substitute for this one because it's this isn't needed to make this thing work, but this thing is. And so there's a second team that takes what the first team did, and they go, okay, we can make this a fast food item. You look at some of the wraps and some of the parfaits and the things they're doing. That's how they figured that out, because they sat in a room and said, okay, what is it that makes this work?
Right.
And somehow get this gourmet thing down to a fast food level because it makes sense.
Right.
Because that's what McDonald's does.
Right. It's very interesting if I was working in a small church, I don't think I would apologize at all for what my limitations were. Because I will say this, the guys that have had to run things at that campus, and when we opened, I was out there every Sunday at 3 a.m. for about 4 months. It was terrible because I was here on a Saturday all day till late, making sure everything was cool. And I would just go home and watch TV for a couple of hours, like put my head under the faucet and like go back out there. I wouldn't sleep because I was just, I have like 2 hours. How am I going to do that? But that 4 months, I was not apologetic about the services we did. Because I was like, these are cool and everybody's here worshiping and they're meaningful. Mm-hmm. But I meet so many people that want bigger and better and bigger and better. I will tell you this, you have to be better at what you do to do it small.
How so?
It takes a lot more creativity and thought process to evoke those God moments and those moments I'm talking about in a set, to be able to pull those off in a creative way in a small setting. And I think a lot of people overlook that. Well, we're just a small thing. It can kind of be crappy or whatever. Bull. It can be amazing if you pay attention to it. You know what? Yeah, I know you're going to have to put your drums encased in glass. Everybody's trying to get out of glass. Your room is 200 seats. Mm-hmm. Put the drummer in an aquarium. Give him, some deodorant so he doesn't smell bad. A fan, and do church. Don't apologize for it. And win. All of a sudden, you can use the same drum miking that somebody's using in a big church because it's contained. Mm-hmm. All of a sudden, you have no reason for the drums to sound like crap. All of a sudden, you have no reason for the volume to be totally controlled by the power of the cymbals over there in the corner of the room, right? Mm-hmm. You can take your band. Look, you're not going to have guitar amps on stage. You're stupid if you think you're going to. Put them in a road case in the back hallway, put a mic on it, and turn it up in the house and have great music. There's all these things you can do, but you have to think about it a little more. And I think it takes more creativity and more brain power to actually succeed at that than walking into a place with an unlimited budget and all this stuff and all these things. It is complicated, but it is kind of easy. I mean, I've been doing this a long time, but I can get a drum kit tuned up really fast in a big room pretty quickly. In a small room, it takes me longer because I'm contending with the sound off the stage. Yeah. Plus the sound in the PA. Well, they're out of time. How are we going to make this work? It takes some more nuance. It takes a little more finesse. It's challenging. Mm-hmm. I like it. I didn't dislike doing all those services out there. Now, getting up and being somewhere at 3 a.m. is complete heresy.
Yeah.
But once I got past that and was in there with a team of guys that were having a good time, it was pretty cool. And you're sitting there going, man, a few hours ago, this stupid rectangular sheetrock room with a concrete floor they were still cleaning up from the party that was in it the last night. And now it's church, and it sounds amazing because we've really thought through all these little things. Now, that wasn't weekend one, obviously.
Right.
We had to get there. But I really look at some of the guys that are doing production in small churches, and I kind of look at them and give them a pat on the back, because I'm like, it's not easy. And what limited experience I've had doing it at the small thing, it's not easy. But maybe that's a different way to spin it. Maybe that's a different way to look at it. If you're always wanting to be bigger and better and bigger and better, it doesn't mean you can't have goals and aspirations, but sometimes just being realistic about your situation is pretty awesome.
Start where you're planted.
Start where you're planted. I watch the stuff that you do, and there's nothing to feel weird about your venue and everything. It's awesome. It's beautiful, but it's not as big as this room. But you're using the same kind of things you see on a huge scale, and you're applying the same kind of reasoning, the same kind of way to do track breakouts and to condense things and make it sound good, and same kind of choices on microphones and technology, because it works. But you found the ones that work. Some things you see, you're just like, well, we can't do that. So you just don't worry about it.
We have not hung anyone from the ceiling yet.
You still can.
There's always next Christmas.
There's always next Christmas.
Yeah.
But you know what? We did that a couple times, and it was awesome. I'm so glad we don't have to mess with that anymore. I really am. Maybe it's selfish, but I enjoy what I do a little better because maybe I get to participate in the worship experience a little more because I'm not so concerned with someone falling from the ceiling. Or I'm not concerned about, is our insurance coverage okay for all these lasers we're about to show? Or did everybody do their stuff right? I would like to come home from Christmas not beat up on Christmas Eve and actually enjoy the season.
Yeah.
You know what? Going a little simpler and trying to match what we do maybe at our other venues has been kind of cool.
Yeah.
To kind of scale it back. It's been a good thing. So, you look at all that in perspective and go, this has been a cool exercise to figure out, to actually walk into a space and go, what can I do without to make this work in a small building?
Now, what was the non-negotiables? Like, after doing all this, like, what are the things, like, and it might even be something like, we did try to take this out and we realized, nope, that's got to stay there. Like, what are the things that I guess are at the true essence of, okay, that feels like church on the move?
We knew we had to have a decent worship experience. Like, we weren't going to go acoustic. Like, that was the thing that came up several times. And, it's kind of like whack-a-mole. You kind of whack it to make it go away. It came up several times. Let's go acoustic. And we tried that, and it sucks. It's not for us. We're known for just the music and the quality and all that. To do completely acoustic wasn't going to work. As a one-off or a Wednesday night, like you said, that's all great. Or maybe a segment in the set, perfect. But for that to be it doesn't work.
So it still needed to sound full, but appropriate for the room.
That's right. And appropriate for the room meant we were going to have to embrace tracks a lot more than we had before. And you listen to the mix out there, I mean, if you're really accomplished musician, you're like, okay, where's the rhythm guitar player? Well, it's in a box up there. It's not there. Who cares? All it is just adding more fullness and texture to the sound. So that was quality audio was something we weren't going to budge on. I mean, just weren't going to do. Quality audio and video, we weren't going to budge on. The lighting, we knew we were going to just have to do what we could, and that was going to be it.
But it's still quality. It's
still quality.
It's not complex. You don't got a lot of things.
It's just a compromise. It was just a compromise because we had a pretty elaborate setup figured out, but we kind of put the dollars together, and then we looked at just what it was going to take for a team to put this together every morning, and it didn't make sense. We did a lot of things like quality audio. How are you going to do that? Well, we built these huge custom carts that the entire line array could fit in hanging. So you could roll the cart up under the ceiling and drop a chain motor down and pick it up, and the entire thing lifts out of it, already arrayed and pinned and ready to go. All you do is plug it in, fly it. Some of those things were non-negotiable. Like, we're going to make that work. We're going to use digital technology for the consoles so that we have...
Wait, I'm sorry. You did what?
I know. I had to embrace digital technology. I know, because I got rid of it all. But at the time, like, we're analog everywhere. But out there and at several other rooms on our main campus, that's what made sense. I needed to be able to send a library file of so-and-so's vocal channel to the campus. So, because when we started, it was rotating worship teams. Mm-hmm. So it was different every weekend. We've kind of stopped that now, but how do you go out there and not start from scratch? Right. I mean, you've got a very limited amount of time to get things going. So it was really cool is that we could get something working in one room and save that file of their vocal chain and send it out there, and they could load it, and it's all magic.
Do all the different tweaks they need to do to accommodate that room. But
yeah, but most of that I did in the PA. So the console is actually pretty close. In fact, a few times we had them rehearse in one of our other venues here on this campus with their console. Like a totally different PA, totally different room, but everything was identical, even their console, so that they had everything stored. Then they would go set up on Sunday in the smaller venue, and the mix is together. The ear mixes are together, and it was pretty effective. It was just a lot of work to kind of do that. Yeah. We tried everything. If you can think of it, we tried it to see what we could come up with. Mm. But those are some things we just weren't gonna be okay with. We were okay with there not being a lighting show. And you know what? Now we have a lot of lights and stuff, but there's no show. Mm-hmm. A lot of songs are one cue. Go.
Purple.
Sit there for 4.5 minutes. Maybe there's a build that's a brighter purple, and then it's another one because it just doesn't need much. Yeah. So we knew that was okay. But quality audio, sound, comfortable seating, a room that sounded good acoustically, those were non-negotiables. Like we're going to carpet the room. We're going to have chairs that have an intense amount of padding on them, and they're really comfortable. But I wanted chairs that, even if they weren't full, had enough density to help absorb acoustical issues in the room. Yeah. And it is. You walk in, and it's just warm and inviting, and it sounds good. It was a non-negotiable on the guest experience. When you walk into the building, does it feel warm and inviting the way it would here? It wasn't going to be okay to have some crappy entranceway that wasn't going to work. And so the way we set up the building took that into account. So when you walk in, it was just, this means something. Because we still try to operate church as if everybody did this, I think it would change the way we do church. If everybody walking in the door, you treated it as if it was their first time to ever walk in your building, and perhaps the first time they've ever heard about Jesus, I think we'd all act differently. Mm-hmm. I think we'd have softer volume. I think we wouldn't have as many lights in everybody's face. I think that we might be nicer. I think that we might actually have a little more ambient light in the room instead of it always being so dark. Because, there's just a lot of different things you might do differently. So we started taking that approach. Let's act as if everyone's brand new. They've never been introduced to Jesus. They don't know what's going on in church. They think we're a bunch of crazy people with their hands up. If we start doing that gives you a really interesting list of things you won't negotiate on. But then you also come up with things that aren't that big of a deal. For instance, so lighting for us wasn't that big of a deal. Haze wasn't that big of a deal. Here's something that was. We want to be able to baptize people after every service. How in the crap do you do that in a conference center?
Yeah, that you rent.
That we rent. So we built a huge tank on wheels that I designed. It was like, take them to the octagon, and it's this octagonal base that you could set up one of those portable tubs on, that you can get, like single-use tubs. And we would fill it up with water at the venue and heat it. But a team would come out and put this together, 2 people, and start filling it with water like at 4 or 5 in the morning and heating it. And it would be to a decent temperature that wasn't cold by the time church started. That was something we weren't comfortable not offering that. We wanted that to be something, if somebody has a salvation experience, we want to offer them the opportunity to follow through with that and do a public expression of their faith, right? That's a big deal. How do you do that? Where do you empty it? You know what? You just start figuring it out. There's a huge, massive industrial floor drain in the kitchen, 1 door down from the lobby. Drain it into there.
Yeah.
That's what it's made for. Do you have to dry the thing out and figure a way to store it? Yep. But you know what? You're in a church full of resourceful volunteers that will figure it out. There's always somebody in there who's like some industrial king who can get it sorted out. Those were several things we weren't going to mess with. We weren't going to negotiate on the quality of our kids' experience. So when we opened, there's these little rooms that are like twice as big as this room here, with trees and moving lights on them. They're little crappy lights, but to kids, they're awesome. And like you put a 70-inch TV in a little room and it's big, especially to a kid. Mm-hmm. We weren't going to negotiate on that stuff. And they had microphones, and you didn't need microphones. Like the room wasn't big enough. But we did that just so the kids felt like they were a part of an experience. Yeah. So it was, that's cool. We had to negotiate on how awesome the cafe experience was going to be, or the coffee or something like that. It was still there, but it might be out of a pourable jug versus a barista making something, but who cares? You go out there and it feels like church. So again, it was analyzing all that stuff. And I wasn't a direct party to a lot of that other stuff I just mentioned, because you're the production guy. At some point, I don't care about the nursery cribs and the bassinets and the rocking chairs, but I needed to accommodate those people that did care. And so, it's cool if you recognize your limitations. It can be cool. And everybody thinks that's a negative. I think that's such a positive. If I can know where my limitations are and what my boundary is, now I'll guarantee you I can build Shangri-La like in this little sandbox. But if you put me on the open beach where everything's unlimited, it's actually harder to come up with what you're going to do. Think about it. So we've put this box together with interesting boundaries, some limitations, and we're like...
And you figured out the strengths. And you
play to the strengths. We found the weaknesses, and we just don't worry about that. Mm-hmm. We're not good at that. So let's not do that. Right? Mm-hmm. And it started working. It wasn't overnight, but it started working. Now, it kind of sucks sometimes. All the comments you hear about, after a weekend are about the campus experiences, because now it's just kind of old hat what we do here. Everybody's like, oh yeah, it's big and cool, whatever. Yeah. Wow, let me tell you about the South thing. And you're like, man, shut up.
Yeah. When you poured over like a certain lighting, or, like a neat moment.
Do you know how long I spent on that kick drum sound? Yeah. What, are you kidding me? You're talking about the kick drum that's an SM58 in a glass aquarium? What? Yeah.